Jonathan Kim joins us from ReThink Reviews. We're going to look at Restrepo today. John's got a review as usual. We're going to watch it and then come back and talk about it. And in our conversation, we want to talk about is Afghanistan winnable? The promises we've made. We've got a cow story. We've got a lot of things going on. This looks like a really powerful movie. Let's watch the review first.
When the boys built that base, Taliban or the AAF forces in the valley, they were completely in shock. It was like a middle finger sticking out. And they realized once they could not knock off OP Restrepo, we had the upper hand. They started becoming afraid.
Get some, Thomas!
Woo! Hey, hit the bottom right. Hit the bottom right of the village.
Get this!
Winner of the 2010 Grand Jury Prize at Sundance for Best Documentary, Restrepo tells the story of the 173rd Airborne 2nd Platoon as they spend a year in the Korangal Valley, the deadliest place in all Afghanistan. How deadly? By the end of 2007, when America's attention was largely focused on Iraq, nearly 70% of all the bombs dropped in Afghanistan landed in or around this valley. Filmmakers Sebastian Junger and Tim Hetherington spent about 5 months with 2nd Platoon over the course of their deployment to show the war from a soldier's perspective, the good, the bad, the scary, and the silly, without narration, political analysis, or outside experts. But does a movie about the controversial, longest-running war in American history need a political stance? Is one implied if it doesn't? Or is it enough for the filmmakers to act as journalists and let the audience make up their own minds? These are tough questions, so let's try to answer some. If the film has a main character, it's probably Captain Dan Kearney, who's tasked with finding a way to keep the Korangal base from being shot at every day by insurgents. His solution is to take 2nd Platoon out in the middle of the night to dig and build an outpost on a perch overlooking the base right where the insurgents have been firing from, naming it Outpost Restrepo after a beloved medic who's killed early in the deployment. That makes OP Restrepo a bullet magnet, a miserable and scary place with multiple firefights every day and attacks coming from all directions. But as we see during the film, the young men of 2nd Platoon have a complex relationship with violence. After all, it's what these guys signed up for, and the struggle between life and death, the incomparable adrenaline rush it creates, and the intense bonding forged by their willingness to die for each other, creates a kind of connection and camaraderie that simply can't be found outside a war zone. One soldier claims that he doesn't know how he'll go back to civilian life after the rush of war, and when the fighting dies down and weeks go by without action, the soldiers are left actually wishing to be shot at to have something to do and regain that high. It's during this downtime that we see the lighter side of a soldier's life, where they joke, wrestle, play video games, even dance with each other to pass the time and create a sense of intimacy. But the realities of war come soon enough, as the soldiers are sent on patrols where they know insurgents are watching their every move, and have to go into villages where it's impossible to know who to trust. And when the fighting comes in Restrepo, it's as scary as anything you've seen in any horror movie. The worst of it comes during an operation called Rock Avalanche, which finds 2nd Battalion pinned down out in the open and one of its best soldiers killed. While the film's sympathies are clearly with the soldiers, Restrepo doesn't shy away from the darker side of things. There's the flashes of bloodlust, and the intractable disconnect as Captain Kearney tries to explain to villagers how the U.S. will help them, while telling them to just get over all the civilians who had been killed or arrested under his predecessor's command. The film also shows the aftermath of a bombing raid that kills innocent villagers, destroys homes, and wounds children. But, as someone who's against the war, everything I saw in the film begged one question. Why are we there? Nothing the soldiers did, no matter how brave, and nothing they sacrificed, including their lives, to me, did anything to defend American freedom or prevent a terrorist attack, which are supposedly our two main reasons for being there. We're not building a viable nation, we'll never eliminate the Taliban, nor are we solving the centuries-old ethnic and religious conflicts that are sure to flare into all-out civil war when we leave. Even the 2nd Platoon's goal of stabilizing the Korangal Valley so a road could be built never happens, with OP Restrepo eventually being abandoned at the cost of 50 American lives and untold millions in taxpayer dollars. And while Restrepo takes pains to avoid taking a political stance, I worry it continues America's unhealthy worship of soldiers, where support the troops no matter what easily becomes support for the war. Personally, I'm not sure it's possible to act nobly for a cause that isn't noble, but is at best foolhardy. Still, Restrepo is a powerful, gripping documentary that deserves to be seen and talked about. But what you talk about will have a lot to do with what you bring with you to the theater. I'm Jonathan Kim, and this is a ReThink Review.
John, most important thing for the moment being is you're telling me they wasted all those American lives and then they just gave up on that hill. So that it was all for nothing.
Basically. I mean, it's obviously not uncommon in wars that you sacrifice tons of lives to take some hill or some crest or whatever it is, and you end up giving it up. But yes, in this case, I think it was in 2000, it was this year, we gave up Outpost Restrepo.
All right, fantastic. I feel so much better about the mission. So now, the objective was to build a road, right? And talk to me about promises we make and whether they get delivered or not.
Right. So in the movie, there's a part where Captain Dan Kearney, he's sitting down with these elders and he's saying, listen, if we can stabilize this valley, which means that you have to turn in people who are fighting against us, we're going to build this road and it's going to increase trade. And he says, like, I'm going to make all you guys rich. We're going to, like, it's going to be great when we build this road. And we end up not building the road. And at the end, at the end of the movie, the soldiers from the 2nd Platoon, they go home and they're happy to go home. But these Afghan people, they're still there. They didn't get their road, which you don't even necessarily get a sense that they were asking for it or wanting it. And in that meeting, like I mentioned in the video, he's like, we're going to build this road. It's going to be really great. And the elders say, well, we want to talk to you about civilians who are, like, villagers who were killed, people who were killed on their own property, in their own houses. What about that? And he's like, that was under the guy before me. We're wiping the slate clean. Of who, like, who decides that? These elders are just supposed to, like, stomach that it's like, no, we're just not going to talk about that anymore. And, like, that's the thing that obviously means something to them, and we totally don't listen.
Mm-hmm. But to be fair, we're fighting the anti-Afghan forces, right?
Yeah, it's a term that's used throughout the military and is used in this movie, anti-Afghan forces, who are Afghan people. And often people who are from the villages that we're supposed to be defending. And these are people who are trying to throw out foreign occupation, which is, most people would say, is a noble goal, to throw out foreign occupation of your country. But they're called anti-Afghan forces in the movie and throughout the military.
We who don't live in Afghanistan are the pro-Afghan forces, and the people who live in Afghanistan are the anti-Afghan forces.
Right.
Now, of course, not black and white. It depends on which side you're on, we're with the government forces, etc. But the use of the language is, in some ways, amusing and unfortunate.
Yeah, and we also often pay the anti-Afghan forces. Like the New York Times had that article, I guess, last week about our trucking companies who pay essentially protection money to warlords and drug runners, saying, if we pay you this money, then don't attack our trucks. And so we are paying the anti-Afghan forces to support us or to not attack us.
But to be fair though, that's what worked in Iraq. I mean, the brilliant genius Petraeus, etc. His genius idea was, hey, maybe if I pay the Sunni insurgents not to fight me, they'll stop fighting me, and that worked.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily going to stop them from fighting the Shiites.
Uh-huh.
And that's the big problem.
So, I mean, that goes to the larger issue. So we fight. We don't really build the roads. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And in the end, is there any way that we live Afghanistan without an obvious muddled draw? What were we doing there? Okay, we just left, didn't deliver 2/3 of our promises, and we'll see you guys later.
It seems like it, because I interviewed Rory Stewart, who's a British guy who walked across Afghanistan and spent a lot of time there. He says, we talk so much about, he talked about like what we should do and what we ought to do. He was like, that all implies that we can do it. And that's not at all assured at all. He said, like, imagine you took like the poorest, most crime-ridden, drug-infested neighborhood in America, and you said, okay, we're going to turn this around in 2 years. How are we going to do it? What's the 3 big things we got to do? People would say, you're crazy. You can't do that. Like, there's a literacy problem. There's the fact that people don't have jobs. There's, all these other things. Now, like, take that area and multiply it times 200 how bad it is. And in a culture that you don't understand, with a history you don't know anything about, and then say you're supposed to come in and fix that, like, it's ridiculous.
Well, John, let me add 2 things to that analogy, because on top of that, let's say you want to go fix Detroit, right? But we don't send reconstruction guys to fix Detroit. We should send the military.
Right.
Okay, and their main way of fixing things is shooting things, right? So then they go to Detroit and they're like, all right, here we go, and then they set up camps. And now the analogy's still not right, because Detroit, it's Americans, right? But imagine if it was, no, the Russians are going to come help us, and they're going to take over Detroit, and the way they are going to do it is with guns and tanks. And if they kill some civilians, it's okay, they're going to build roads, they're going to build an infrastructure. And then, could you do it in the long run if you, using the Detroit analogy, tackle literacy, et cetera, all those things, right? You could, but it depends, or you might be able to, but it depends how long are you going to stay and how much money are you going to spend.
Yeah, I mean, you would figure a job like that would take 30, 50 years maybe to really turn it around. And there's this saying, I'm not sure if it's an Afghan saying or a Taliban saying, but the saying is, you in the West, you have the watches, but we have the time. Like,
That's a great saying.
We're going to be here. Like, they even view, like, in that country, they view time differently than we do. They know that we're not going to stay, and they can basically just wait us out or bleed us slowly, things like that. And we were talking about with promises, like, that's the thing. Like the Taliban, basically, their promise to the people was, we're going to bring security and law and order, and they did it. Whereas we're like, no, we're going to give everyone electricity, like you're going to be like America, like you're all going to be rich. We're going to give you a centralized government, which you've never had in your country, and so much of the country is rural. Even when there was some sort of government, they never saw it, except unless they may have to pay a bribe to someone.
I mean, the more we talk about this, the more I think, does anyone believe it's winnable? I mean, I read the Rolling Stone article. McChrystal didn't think it was really winnable. His guys didn't think it was winnable. The troops didn't think it was winnable. So who the hell thinks it's winnable? And then second of all, what just drives me crazy all the time is, what the hell is winning? What's victory?
Right.
You know, when do we declare victory? And what is it? We built 7 roads instead of 8 roads somewhere? Or, I mean, instead of 6 roads? What is it? What the hell is victory?
Yeah, and also, I mean, like the idea, like, oh, we're going to get rid of the Taliban. Like, saying we're going to get rid of the Taliban, in my mind, that's like saying another country coming to America and saying, we're going to get rid of the evangelicals. It's like, you know, like, I'm not an evangelical, I'm not a big fan of theirs, but there's parts of the country where they're really popular. And there's people, you know, in every city who have some relative or some friend who's an evangelical, and we'd be like, really? Do you really want, like, I don't think that's really a good idea.
That's a really interesting analogy, right? So, and then in that analogy, the evangelicals become, in our lingo, the anti-American forces.
Right.
Right? And they're like, wait a minute, we're Americans, right? So there's so many things wrong here. And then I know you want to talk about the soldier worship, right?
Right.
And so in this movie, you know, so they're getting a high off of this, which is understandable, etc. I'm not blaming them, but it reminded me of the Hurt Locker a little bit. And
It's getting a lot of comparisons to the Hurt Locker, yeah.
right, and so, I mean, but they're incredibly brave, and they think they're doing it for a noble reason, right?
Sometimes. I mean, one thing that Sebastian Junger, I heard him in an interview say that, like, they don't really talk about the politics that much, which to me is disturbing, because you want to know that you're out there for the right reason, fighting for the right cause. And like I said in the review, like, when was the last war that we fought where American freedom was at stake? It never happened in my lifetime. I mean, so it's like, so what are we actually doing over there? Is it a just cause? And can you behave nobly? Can you act nobly for a cause that maybe isn't just or is maybe stupid, like trying to fix Afghanistan in 3 years or something, which is impossible. And as we try to do that, we're going to kill a lot of civilians. And, you know, like you're saying, like this equivalency of like, oh, we're going to build a road. We may kill some innocent civilians, but, you know, what are you going to do? Like, we would never accept that. Like, if the cops went and, you know, were to wipe out all gangs in Los Angeles, but killed 10 innocent civilians, they would be, you know, hung from the rafters for that.
Right. So. Let alone killing hundreds or thousands of civilians in LA. I mean,
right.
Imagine what happens then. So, of course, that leads to, okay, but what if we leave? And then we'll have a bloody civil war. So,
right.
Is that what you're in favor of, John? Is that what you're in favor of?
I'm for bloody civil wars. No, but it's just that the thing is, we're not solving the things that are causing the civil war. And I think a lot of these forces in Afghanistan, they're just kind of waiting till we're gone to fight it, because all those divisions are still there. There's still going to be a power struggle. And I think that if we leave now, the war will happen and then it will end. Whereas now we're drawing out when that's going to happen and causing fighting in a lot of other, I mean, because like there's parts in the movie where you see that like we're attracting fighting. We're attracting fighters from other countries and also fighters from other parts of Afghanistan to come and fight us there, and we're like in people's villages.
Well, John, of course, we got to fight them over there, so we don't have to fight them over here.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the Taliban was on the verge of invading.
See, it's like I always think it's like if we were trying to get rid of the mafia in America, you don't go bomb Italy. You know, you don't bomb Sicily to get the mafia in New Jersey. And that's basically the argument that we're making here. It's like, well, that's how we have to get them, is go over to where they're from. But
all right, the final misunderstanding about how we're handling things wrong. Tell me about a cow.
Okay, so there's a story in the movie where these elders come to Outpost Restrepo, and at first the commanding officer is like, oh, this is a big step, because the elders, like, we go to them to talk, but they never come to us to talk. And so the elders come in, they say, well, a cow from our village got caught up in your wire of your outpost, and you guys killed the cow and took it. So we would like you to give us $400 for the cow, and we won't do it. We won't give them the $400, and we're trying to bargain with them, saying, okay, well, figure out how much the cow weighed, and we'll give you that much in rice and beans and sugar.
and we'll give that to you, but we can't actually give you the money. And so, like, that's one where it's like we keep on saying that we know what's best for Afghans. This guy's saying, like, we want money for this cow, and we won't give it to him. And when you think about it, and in the theater, this actually plays for laughs. Like, people kind of laughed at this. And in the question and answer, someone asked about it, and people kind of laughed. But what is a cow to these people? It's, you can breed it, you can have more cows, you can haul stuff with it, you can plow your fields.
It's their livelihood. You can't breed beans,
Yeah, you can get milk for years, like this is a really important thing to the way they live, and we totally brush it off. And when you think that we're spending billions of dollars a week, and when they actually tell us exactly what they want that will help their lives, or at least give them a sense of fairness, we don't do it.
After all this, John Kim, still hopelessly naive. Now, let me ask you this very simple question. Does any defense contractor make any money by giving them that cow?
No.
But if they build a road, or they build this, or they build that, do the defense contractors get money for that?
Yes, they do.
Huh, fascinating. But I'm sure that's not the motivation. All right. It's ReThink Reviews on YouTube, on Huffington Post, rethinkreviews.net. John, as always, a pleasure.